What's going on, everyone, and welcome to NFL Nexus. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating situations in the entire league, the Indianapolis Colts' pivotal 2026 offseason. Seriously, this is a wild story. It's about a team that looked like a true contender, then completely collapsed in the blink of an eye. And now they're placing these massive, incredibly polarizing financial bets, all in a desperate attempt to recapture that fleeting moment of glory. So let's break down exactly how they got here and what this high-stakes gamble really means for their future. And hey, before we get started, if you enjoy this kind of deep dive NFL content, do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button, like the video, and definitely drop a comment below with your thoughts. It helps the channel out a ton. Also, a quick note, we've just launched a new series of coloring books. They're perfect for kids, grandkids, or even for adults looking to unwind. You can check them out using the link in the description or by scanning the QR code that's on your screen now. Your support means the world to us. Okay, let's get into it.
All right, so here's the game plan for today. First, we have to talk about the absolute whiplash of their 2025 season, because that sets the stage for everything else. Then we're going to dissect two gigantic contracts they handed out, one that everybody loved and one that raised a lot of eyebrows. After that, we'll look at their attempts to overhaul the defense, pinpoint their single biggest need heading into the draft, and finally, we'll tie it all together to really understand the massive franchise-altering bet the Colts are making.
So to really, truly get a grip on the gravity and the logic, or, maybe the desperation behind the Colts' offseason moves, you first have to understand the absolute roller coaster that was their 2025 season. I mean, it was, without a doubt, one of the most jarring in-season turnarounds we've seen in a long, long time. It was a tale of two completely different teams inhabiting the same jerseys.
And this timeline right here, it just captures the whole story perfectly. Look at that first part. For the first 10 weeks of the season, the Colts were the talk of the league. They weren't just winning. They were 8-1 and looked like a legitimate, bona fide AFC contender. People were calling them the ultimate dark horse, this tough, physical team with a surprisingly explosive offense. Everything was clicking. It was perfect. But then, it happened. The breaking point. Quarterback Daniel Jones goes down with a season-ending injury, and that single event, poof, triggered a catastrophic 7-game losing streak to end the season. They went from a team no one wanted to play to a complete afterthought, just like that.
And this quote. This right here is the key that unlocks this entire offseason. This context is absolutely 100% crucial. Every major decision they made, every single dollar they spent, has been driven by this one singular, all-consuming desire to recapture that early season magic. In their minds, that 8-1 team is their true identity, not the one that collapsed. And they are clearly willing to pay a massive premium and take huge risks to prove that they're right. So with that mission statement, recreate the 8-1 start at all costs firmly in mind, the front office made its first major move. They decided to lock down a key piece of that explosive offense. And unlike some other decisions we're about to get to, this one was widely seen across the league as a really, really smart investment, the smart money deal, if you will. And they put their money where their mouth is. The Colts made a huge financial commitment to wide receiver Alec Pierce, signing him to a massive 4-year extension. The deal is worth up to $114 million, with a very, very substantial $84 million of that being fully guaranteed. Now, that's not just a little vote of confidence. That is a gigantic statement that they view him as a foundational, cornerstone piece of the offense they are so desperately trying to rebuild. That guaranteed money says, you're our guy, no matter what. Okay, so to understand why all the experts and analysts universally love this deal, we need to quickly look at a key advanced metric from Pro Football Focus, or PFF. It's called wins above replacement, or just WAR for short. Now, don't let the name intimidate you. In simple terms, this stat just calculates how many more wins a player is worth to his team compared to just a generic replacement-level guy you could sign off the street. It's a pretty direct way to measure a player's actual on-field value. And boom, here it is. This chart tells the whole story. This is the argument for the contract in a nutshell. According to PFF's advanced data, Alec Pierce performed as the 13th most valuable wide receiver in the entire NFL last season. His brand new contract makes him the 12th highest paid receiver. Do you see how close those numbers are? That near perfect alignment between on-field performance and take-home pay? That is the absolute sweet spot for any front office. They're paying fair market value for elite production. It's just a clean, smart, justifiable deal. So what makes him so valuable? It's his incredible, almost historic efficiency. This is the crucial point. He's not some volume receiver who racks up stats on 100 little 5-yard catches. No, he is a game-breaking, defense-stretching, deep threat. Getting over 1,000 yards on only 47 catches, that is just astonishing. It shows his value isn't just in the final yardage number, but in how he gets them, on huge chunk plays. That downfield element is considered absolutely irreplaceable to what the Colts want to do on offense, especially because it forces defenses to back off and opens up everything for Jonathan Taylor's powerful running game. Okay, so if the Alec Pierce deal was the safe, smart, universally applauded bet, the Colts' next major extension was the literal polar opposite. This move was so debated, so controversial, that it actually earned the title from Pro Football Focus as their single least favorite move made by any team this entire offseason. That's a pretty strong statement. And that move was extending quarterback Daniel Jones. They gave him a 2-year, $88 million deal. Let that sink in for a second. That is a staggering $44 million per year. And it could even climb higher, all the way up to a potential $100 million if he hits certain performance incentives. This contract immediately launched him right into the stratosphere of the league's highest paid quarterbacks. And right here, this is the heart of the controversy. Remember that beautiful, perfect alignment we saw with Alec Pierce, where his rank and his pay were almost identical? Well, this is the opposite of that. The Colts are paying Daniel Jones a top 13 quarterback salary, but his actual on-field performance last season graded out as only the 21st best quarterback in the league. That is a massive, glaring disconnect between the paycheck and the production. Now, in fairness, we do have to look at the context here, which the source material is quick to point out. While it's a clear overpay based purely on the analytics, you have to admit the team was in an incredibly tough spot. There were very few, if any, viable starting quarterbacks on the free agent or trade market who fit their system. The general manager and head coach were essentially betting their jobs on proving that 8-1 stretch was the real deal. They felt like they were boxed in, and that gave them very little leverage to negotiate a more team-friendly contract. But here's the thing. What elevates this from just a simple overpay to a truly monumental, franchise-altering gamble is the enormous risk attached. I'm talking about Jones's terrifying injury history. He's coming off a torn Achilles, which is already a brutal injury to come back from. But that tear was in the exact same leg where he had previously torn his ACL. I mean, come on. You add a fractured fibula to that list and you start to see the huge problem here. Investing $88 million guaranteed into a player with that specific combination of severe lower body injuries is a risk of the highest order. So with their two big offensive cornerstones now locked in for big money, one deal celebrated, one highly criticized, the team turned its focus to the other side of the ball, and they had to. They really needed to conduct a significant overhaul of a defense that had its own share of serious struggles, especially during that ugly late-season collapse. Their main strategy, it seems, was to completely reshape the front seven. They let key guys like linebackers Zaire Franklin and Jermaine Pratt walk out the door, along with defensive end Kwity Paye. To replace them, they brought in players like Akeem Davis-Gaither, Arden Key, and Michael Clemens. Most analysts, though, have described this whole process as more of a quantity over quality approach. Yeah, they replaced the bodies, but it's really debatable whether they actually upgraded the overall talent level at those positions. And the clear number one goal of all this defensive shuffling was to fix a pass rush that was deeply, deeply flawed. On paper, you might look at their stats and see they ranked a respectable 15th in sacks last season and think, hey, that's not so bad, right? Middle of the pack. But that number was incredibly deceptive. In reality, that ranking was massively inflated by the spectacular individual performance of just one guy, sophomore edge rusher Laiatu Latu. He was a one-man wrecking crew. The rest of the defensive line, meanwhile, consistently struggled to generate any pressure at all. So since those moves in free agency didn't really seem to solve their big defensive problems, and you could even argue they were just lateral moves at best, the Colts now have to turn to the NFL draft. This is it. This is their last best chance to fill the remaining and still very critical holes on this roster before the 2026 season kicks off. The pressure is on. But they are facing a major challenge right out of the gate. They're starting with one hand tied behind their back because their most valuable piece of draft capital, their first-round pick, is gone. It was traded away to the Pittsburgh Steelers as part of that big package that also sent receiver Michael Pittman Jr. to Pittsburgh. What that means is they'll be sitting on the sidelines just watching on day one of the draft, which makes their day 2 and day 3 picks that much more important. Now, while the team definitely has a few needs, the consensus among pretty much every analyst is crystal clear. The top priority, without question, must be to bolster that defensive line. And why is that? Well, it comes down to scarcity. You can often find a serviceable linebacker or a decent depth receiver in the later rounds of the draft, but finding those elite, game-changing pass rushers, that's much, much harder. That kind of talent is almost exclusively found early in the draft, and the Colts simply cannot afford to miss their window to grab one. Okay, so let's bring all of these different pieces together and look at the big picture. When you step back and you look at all the moves, you see a very clear, albeit very risky, strategy. The Indianapolis Colts have spent a fortune and committed massive resources with one singular goal in mind: to perfectly reconstruct the team that started the 2025 season so brilliantly before it all came crashing down. They're trying to put the band back together. And it's really important to point this out. There is a clear path to success here. This whole thing could work. A major factor working in their favor is this. According to opponent win percentages from last season, the Colts are projected to have the fourth easiest schedule in the entire league. Now that is significant. A soft early schedule could absolutely allow them to stack up some early wins, build confidence, get on a roll, and potentially make everyone forget about the enormous financial risks they took to build this roster.
But that leaves us with the ultimate multi-million-dollar question, doesn't it? As they say, winning cures everything. If the Colts come out of the gate and dominate early, if Daniel Jones stays healthy and plays well, these contracts will be hailed as genius moves by a bold front office. But make no mistake, this franchise has placed an enormous, high-stakes bet on a very fragile foundation. So the question is, have they paid a massive price to recapture magic, or have they just guaranteed a repeat of their last disaster? The answer is going to define this franchise for years to come. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to NFL Nexus for more breakdowns like this one. Thanks for watching.